Right. Now, what we want to do is create some questions for students. And here you see an example of that. So the question says we have a liquid with a certain density, so 900 kilograms per cubic meter, and we are given the volume and the molar mass of the component in this liquid. And we want to know the number of moles in this vessel. So if you look at this problem, we've got a bunch of options we can choose from. And if we just say here, submit answer, well, we didn't choose anything there. So we haven't defined an answer. So we've got 0 marks. But what we also see here is a solution. So a fully rendered solution. So the equation is there. It's using the values in the problem. So it's 6 liters, converting it to cubic meters here. We are using the right mass and the molar mass here. So all the numbers that were used in this problem are worked out. And this is rendered by the compiler. So by that, I mean that these numbers are not fixed. So if we click try another, you can see the density has changed, the volume has changed, and so on. So if we say submit answer, let's say we choose this one, submit answer. So that is the correct answer. So that's worth the mark. And now we can see in the solution that all this has changed as well. So this has responded correctly to the values given in this instance of the question. So we want to be able to create questions like this using our Publon editor. So of course, the first thing we can do, clear the editor. Let's put in a new blank doc, position at plons, and then we find the question type here. So under Publon elements, so these are classes of different types of objects. They will be updated over time, so there'll be more objects appearing in here. You can see we can do plots and graphs. This means graph in the strict sense, like nodes and edges, which is different to plots, then animated drawings as well. So if we just double click on question, then that's inserted it there. And let's do indentation for that. So re-indent, and then let's run that. So we've refreshed the view here. So that's our question. And here we see, so yes, it's in plons, where the list of plons now it's through an object. So Publon question, that's just our name for this sub object. We could use anything here. This is not a special keyword, but we need to specify the type. So you can see when we inserted this, it inserts it as being of type question. So earlier, we didn't specify a type. When we were inserting text and script and CSS, that is a certain default type. But if we want this type of object, specifically this type of Publon, we have to specify the type as being a question. Hooks are useful. We'll see that in a future video. And then view profile. So we now come to attributes that apply to the type question. So in a question, if you have a view profile of train, it means that you can keep trying different instances of this, and it will show you the solution as well. So when you submit your answer, it will show you the solution, and it will let you try another. So train, so there's train and test and poll, and so other types of profiles we can apply here. So let's just keep going with it as is. So here you can see question LaTeX. So that refers to the question up here. And you can see all the text. And if you follow the LaTeX video, you'll see how to create all this. And now we can see the variables, right? If you read its molar mass is grams per mole. Here, its molar mass is a number grams per mole. So this number 60 has been created by the compiler. So that's, we've declared a variable here. So if you look at this attribute, right, under question LaTeX, we've got another attribute verbs. The order doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's in the same list of things. So in this attribute verbs, we create an object of all the variables that are relevant to this question. So we can create a density variable, a volume. So whatever variables we like, we can define here. And this type of variable is a list that we want to randomly choose from. So we can see our choices: 700, 800, 900. So those are the values that we can have. And there is a shorter notation available for this. So instead of saying it's of type CS value, whatever that means, we can instead just say density is an array of things. So comma separated array of numbers. And that's it, right? You just close that list like that. So that's just an array of numbers. And you can do that for all these other variables as well. These are all numbers, so it's fine to do that. So let's just try and re-render, Control-Alt-R, so you can see it renders correctly. This change hasn't broken anything. Let's just check. Yeah, the solution is fine also. So we can create our variables here. So we can create a list of values, and then the compiler will choose one of those. So if we say try another, you can see the number is changing here. So your density is chosen randomly from the list. So as we keep clicking it, you can see different values coming up from the list there. And then down here, we have a little calculation. So to do a calculation instead of a list selection, you use this delimiter, right? Square brackets, angle brackets. So that's to open the calculation, and then angle brackets, square brackets in the other direction. That's to close the calculation. And you can see in this calculation, we've chosen to do it in 2 steps. We first calculate the mass, right? The question is, it wants the moles, not the mass. So this is an intermediate step. We calculate the mass by multiplying the density by the volume. And this volume in the question is stated in liters. So we have to convert this to cubic meters. So that's why divide by 1,000 here. So you can see here that the way to reference a value of a variable is using curly brackets around the name of the variable. So the variable name here, density, and enclosed in curly brackets, that is going to give us a number. It's going to choose a number, and it's going to use that number consistently throughout this problem. So we don't want to choose one density here and then use a different density in our solution and use a different density in our list of answers. We want to choose one value, and we want to use that value consistently. Also, it's important to note that these numbers are calculated from top to bottom. So we first choose a density, then density is available, then volume is chosen, then molar mass is available. So when we write here mass, we know that density and volume are available. When we write moles, right, mass has been worked out in the step before, so that is available as a number. Molar mass is available because that was randomly chosen up here. If we were to switch the position, if we were to put moles ahead of mass here, then it would crash because it wouldn't know where to get mass from as yet. So mass has to be defined first. So you can, reading this list of variables, you can see you can generate the original numbers, but you can also generate your solution. So it's a little bit like reading through a solution here. We'll come back to submissions, but here's the solution down here. So we include the attribute solution LaTeX, and then the system will draw that out when it wants to show the solution. So we can use the full LaTeX formatting to generate our solution here. And again, we can include our variables where we want to show our variables. So that's everything over there. So our solution can be rendered in that way. Now, what we really want also is to express the answers, the options. So if we want to render this as an MCQ, a multiple choice question, then here we create another attribute called submissions. And so we can have multiple submissions. So we are not stuck to just one submission. We could have multiple MCQs. So let's just see if I can do this correctly. So a way to edit, to carefully edit code is to count the number of brackets here. So we can see one object here and then an inner object. And so so 1, 2. So we are going to copy this 1, 2, and then we have to copy the closing parts 1, 2 like that. So that's answer 1. Oops. So that's answer 1. And then say comma, and let's paste that, and let's make answer 2 as a straight copy of that. And let's see if that works. Yeah. So we've got another set of answers here. So it could be the case that we wanted to ask separately, what's the mass? So to change this default text, right? But the default will be to say, just click on the answer. But instead, if we include an attribute here, let's say we specify a label. So the label for this submission is please calculate the mass or something. So what's the mass, right? And if we try to re-render that, so it says here, what's the mass? Okay, so you can create multiple submission points, and there are other types of thing available. So instead of MCQs, you could go for essay type questions as well. So essay, so if that's an essay, then you can see you have a space now to write in an essay type answer. Or if it's just a single value, then that will be a different type of space for submission here. So that's a value type submission. So you can have multiple submissions for the same question. And I'm just going to delete this now. And sorry about that. So we can remove this and just keep going with what we had as it was. Let's just see. Okay, so that's still rendering correctly. You do have to keep checking that there hasn't been some kind of error in the code and that's causing a problem to crash. So yeah, we've got multiple submissions possible. And then you'll see there's actually a mark being allocated here as we make our choices. So if we say try another, and let's say I choose this one, then you see it says that's worth 1 mark. And that's because we also specify a grader here. And so if you look among the submissions that we've specified, there are 4 submissions here. We can have as many submissions as we want, but we've specified 4 here. The first one is mass moles. So this is wrong, right? The number of kilograms is not the answer that we are looking for. We want the number of moles. So moles, that's the answer. That's the correct answer. So that's in position 3. And so if you look at the grader here, option 3 is given 1 mark. So the other answers are not worth anything. So those are 0, right? So that's how you can specify the value of each submission there. Something to note is that it's not necessary to try to position your answer correctly. You see your answers here, your options are shuffled. So the compiler will shuffle these answers. So it doesn't make sense to put your answer here. You might as well just let your answer always be the first one. So we might as well make this one moles and make this one mass. And so we know that's the correct position. So these options must correctly correspond to these options. So because we've written the correct answer in the first position here, then this needs to be a 1, and then this needs to be a 0. So those must correspond. But in terms of what we'll see here, that is always going to be shuffled. So on the user side, the answer will move around. But over here, we need to correctly specify it. So that's how we can specify our value, how we can specify the grader for this problem. Right, so this is the training mode of this instance of the question, and so the student can keep trying out as many versions of this problem as they want, and they can keep viewing the current answer for this question. So that's how you create these question type objects. There are ways to save the user's submission. So when you launch this as a Publon, you can include something to store the user's answer, but we'll explain that in a separate video about storing user state.